He broke into my home early October 2022 and attacked me in bed and bound me and gagged me and took me to this like storage unit.
You just heard a clip from Samantha Stites. She is from the new docuseries Stalking Samantha, 13 Years of Terror. In this interview today, Samantha takes us through a horrifying decade plus of stalking and the moment she was kidnapped from this man, Christopher Thomas. What do you think of this conversation, Lance?
Well, first, I think that it's remarkable that we were able to speak with someone who has been through this situation, this absolutely harrowing moment in her life. It is a cautionary tale for people. It's also a story that needs to be told if anyone suspects that they're being stalked. If they have someone in their life who is exhibiting any of these indicators that they're being stalked, don't feel like you can't tell people. I think that was one of the more frustrating parts of this conversation, hearing her say, what are they going to do? They're not going to believe me the second time around. And people will hear that moment, but take that, like being a little paranoid's okay. And she survived, and it's amazing when we have survivors on. So I cannot wait to hear the feedback for this one. And again, we were so lucky, and she's so lucky to be on the show to tell the story.
Absolutely. Yeah. Big thanks to ABC News and Hulu for the opportunity to interview Samantha. This docuseries, Stalking Samantha, is out on August 19th, 2025. So tomorrow, if you are listening to this episode on release day.
And remember, please follow us on social media at MissingCSM. And we'll break real quick for commercial and be right back with our conversation with Samantha Stites.
Welcome to the podcast, Samantha Stites. How are you today?
Hi, Tim. I'm good. Thanks for asking. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, we're so thrilled to have you on. We received the email that gave us sort of this truncated version of your story, and my jaw was on the floor just reading 3 sentences out of that synopsis of what you went through. I was astounded by it. It's such a harrowing story. But before we get into it, do you mind introducing yourself to the audience and maybe a little bit about why you're on the show today?
Sure. My name is Samantha Stites. I live in Michigan. I'm 33. I am a social worker, a master's level trained therapist. I primarily work with older adults right now. I am on the show because I was stalked and then some. I was kidnapped out of my bedroom 2 years ago by this stalker, and he intended to hold me in this soundproof bunker for 2 weeks. And I basically negotiated my way out of that situation and pursued criminal charges, and he is in prison. So that's kind of a little blurb about me.
Yeah, that's when my jaw hits the floor, that you were stalked and you were actually abducted by your stalker and you escaped. And it's so amazing to have you on the show telling your story of escaping, getting out of that situation. Do you mind going into it a little bit further and letting us know where you met this individual and where that relationship started?
So the person who stalked me, his name is Christopher. I met him at Grand Valley State University in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He was somebody who was a non-traditional student, a few years older than me. Basically, I met him because he had interest in this student group I was a part of. And through some like beginning of the year sort of outreach and different things we were doing with the group, I learned he like lived at my apartment complex. I think I just met him like tossing a frisbee with some friends, and he came out and wanted to play with us. I don't remember a lot about meeting him initially. He's, short, had red hair. He went by the name Red at the time, kind of balding, quiet, awkward, not very socially skilled. He was somebody who really enjoyed sports. I believe he was studying like sports management or something. I was nice to him. I made small talk with him in this, small group of people after we were done, tossing a frisbee around in the lawn. And that was essentially kind of how I met him. And, in that era, this was back in 2011, I believe. Back in that era, college students, as they met people on campus, would add them on Facebook. And shortly after that, I did get a request from him, and I started getting some messages from him. And I thought, this is an awkward person. I know some people feel more comfortable messaging sort of thing. And then it wasn't super long after that, I sensed he maybe had some romantic interest in me, and that was not reciprocated by me. So I was very clear with him of like, I'm not interested in hanging out one-on-one. I was nice to him. I chatted with him as he answered questions. I didn't really initiate any conversation. I saw him in person at these group events. And that was my sophomore year of college. So I was at Grand Valley for 5 years. And through that time period, a lot of different things happened. Basically, things kind of ramped up to the point where I had a stern conversation with him of like, I don't want to see you. I don't want to talk to you. I blocked him. I started to sense that maybe things were a little weird. He like left me flowers at my internship, like on my car, that I had just started this internship. People didn't really know where it was. And it wasn't close to the campus. And then I got flowers and a note at my home, and it was unsigned. And at first it was kind of like, oh, maybe there's somebody who's like interested in me. And it was kind of like, I wonder who this is. And then I couldn't figure out who it was, and especially knowing this person knew what my car looked like, where I worked and lived, was kind of gave me pause. And I eventually looped back to him, and he admitted it was him. And I was like, look, I'm not interested in you. And he just kind of wouldn't let it alone. And so I blocked him. I asked him to leave me alone. He kind of keeps showing up, and we have this big sort of face-to-face kind of fight at this bus stop. After my grandpa passed, he showed up at my work, which was different from the internship, with flowers. And I was like, look, I don't want to see you. I don't want to talk to you. I don't know how to be any more clear. And that was really the first time I felt like I don't know what else to do to kind of get this person to leave me alone. I had other male like leaders, other adults like speak with him. Nothing seemed to really work.
When you said that you had a stern conversation, was this a stern conversation that was online before the confrontation at the bus stop? You said that you had a stern conversation with him. Was that something that you did online, or was that also face to face?
Both.
Oh, okay.
I had done both with him. And I think really at that point at the bus stop, people were kind of looking at us like side-eyed, other people waiting for the bus, because my voice was raised. I was clearly agitated. I was telling this person to leave me alone. It was more than just listen, I'm not interested. I don't want to talk to you. It was, more like shouting at him at this point.
At that point, did it feel dangerous to you, or what was kind of the vibe, I guess?
I never really saw him much as like a dangerous kind of guy, because he was just like awkward. He was kind of overweight. He just wanted to like spend time with me or like was giving me flowers and things like that. He didn't seem dangerous, but it was definitely to the point where I was like, I don't know what else to do to like get you to leave me alone. And this was by the time I was like, maybe a junior or a senior. Things had gotten to this level. And he did kind of start leaving me alone, but I started seeing him lots of places, like passing in hallways. I played on an women's like ultimate frisbee club team in college, my last year or two, and I started seeing him like high up in the bleachers, like at practice, which there weren't just like people there watching, or maybe there were people running the track, but he was just kind of sitting there sometimes. So that was when I was kind of like, this feels yucky. I don't know why he's following me. But I was also at this point, this was like right before I graduated. So I assumed, I'm graduating, I'm leaving this city, he's going to be left behind. I won't have anything to worry about come graduation.
When you're telling him these things like, leave me alone, I don't want anything to do with you, I'm assuming that this escalated from a point where you were polite at first, because you said that you were polite to him and you talked to him. So at some point, something has to, like, the line is crossed, and now you go into a territory emotionally that I'm sure you don't want to be at. You don't want to be the person yelling at somebody on a sidewalk at a bus stop. What's his reaction to that? To see you go from the person who was polite and nice to him to telling him, I don't want to see you anymore. What does he say in response to that?
It's just kind of blank. Like, my impression of it was like, he thought maybe like, I need to just give her some time to cool off and she'll come around, sort of thing. Like, he just, I don't know, but he didn't really kind of say much of anything. Like, it was just it wasn't like I understand. It was always kind of there's some misunderstanding he wanted to clear up or something, like, and it's not like we're in a relationship. It's not like we're, there's no misunderstanding. It's you leave me alone kind of thing. So he never really had too much of a reaction or response. Whenever I said that, it was just kind of, initially it was, very kind of like, sorry, I'm busy, or like, no, I'm not interested in going to that event, or I don't want to go with you, or like, finally it was, hey, I don't have any romantic interest in you, like, move along kind of thing. And then it was like blocking him and, those kinds of things. And it just kept escalating. It's like, at that point, my desires are very clear through all of that, and kind of escalates, with this kind of blow up at the bus stop. And then he's kind of starts following me and not talking to me. So it was kind of a lot. And I felt like, once I graduated, I just felt like this was going to resolve itself. Like, move on with life. We're not going to be in this little microcosm of a university, and, it'll be different. And then he showed up like at my hometown, which was like 2.5 hours away from this university. And he drove around the town until he found me. I had applied for this internship, and I had been clear with like other mutual friends or people like that was what I wanted to do. And he basically, like, we pulled over because I recognized he was on his motorcycle following me, and he like was like, hey, I got admitted to the same internship. Can I get a ride with you there? And I'm just like devastated because I was so looking forward to this. And it was very much like, we cannot both go to this thing, this internship out of state. Like, I don't know what to do at this point. And this was really when, a friend sat me down, and I really put down on paper all the instances over the last like 4 or so years of interactions with him. And he urged me to file a PPO. This was like 2 days before I was moving out of state. And so I filed, and the judge granted a 6-year PPO, which was unheard of. Usually they're 6 months, a year, 2 years, maybe. And I thought, this will, getting the legal system involved should take care of it.
Yeah, it should at least scare him away, if nothing else. And was that protection order good for Michigan or further than Michigan?
Technically, it was only good in Michigan, but I could have pursued likely, I was told if I wanted to pursue that out of state, I could as well. And usually, a judge would review what's been granted in another state and grant that if you move or something. So I didn't really, there was one instance where I saw him. There was like some big conference at this place I was an internship, and he tried to approach me and I got security involved, and I never saw him after that or heard from him. So I assumed he just gave up.
So before you got the PPO, how much time had passed between when you met him and realized that this was someone who was very interested in you? And when did you start to consider the word stalking, that he was a stalker?
It was really when my friend sat me down, Craig. He's kind of like sort of like a father figure in my life and was my boss at the time. And he was like, it sounds like he's stalking you. And let's talk about and write down all the things that have happened. I met him in like 2011. This was like approaching fall 2014. So it was kind of just little instances over those years at college. And then, that was September 2014. I think I filed, and then I moved out of state for 5 years.
So in 2014, you filed and they granted you the 6-year PPO. So
yes.
In your head, you're thinking 2020, so far away. Like that's a long time. Yeah, that must have felt really good at the moment.
Yeah, that's like now thinking, 2030, 2031, like, what am I going to be doing then? Who knows?
Yeah.
Like, especially as a 21-year-old or so, however old I was then.
Yeah, it's like a generation later.
It's forever. And so, to me, that seemed like the most extreme measure. And now I had something I could do if I did see him other places. If he was following me, I thought there's no way he's going to follow me halfway across the country to Kansas. So I didn't really, think much of it. I did grad school out there, had a lot of different life things happen there. I lived in the Kansas City area for like 5 years. And then I moved back to northern Michigan in the fall, almost winter of 2019, so very end of 2019, and bought my own house at the beginning of 2020, right before the pandemic. And, life just kind of went on. And obviously everyone was so, concerned about their health and the pandemic through 2020. It was, a stressor of its own. So that's not even in the back of my mind that I have this PPO that's going to expire in September, whatever month it was. It wasn't even on my radar. I hadn't seen him in 5-6 years. And then I'm at this like recreational soccer league and I see him, and I feel like my stomach just falls out of my ass. I'm shocked. Like, he looks thinner, but I'm like, what is he doing in this city, this small city in northern Michigan? He's not from here. I guess it's reasonable. Is this a coincidence? My mind is racing. Is he angry at me? Does he notice me? Is he angry at me? Does he not even care? Has he moved on? All these thoughts. And then it kind of starts up again, and he never tries to speak with me. He never acknowledges me really ever. But he starts coming weekly to this soccer league, and he wasn't somebody who was a soccer player. So I didn't know what to make of it at first.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program.
And is he talking to you? Did he see you that first time when you saw him?
I don't know for sure that he saw me, but I'm like, there's no way he doesn't recognize me.
Yeah.
He doesn't like linger. He never waves. He never approaches me to talk. Nothing. It's just, he could have been another face in the crowd. for a long time, really, until he tried. I was like running late to get to one of our games, and he had asked to like sub on our team. And I show up, and it's like a co-ed league, so you have to have a certain number of men and women on the field at the same time. And we were short women, and so I needed to play. And we're about to like kick off, and we have this big like, I'm like, sorry, I'm here, and I see him like on our team, and I'm like, I get I'm late, but like I'm not playing with this person. Either I'm leaving or he's leaving. Like this isn't, and my team's just like, all right, like, see ya, buddy, like you're not playing with us. And he just like looks at me like, what are you, like, just dumbstruck? And I'm like, at this point, I'm like, you know what you're doing, I think, but he's still not talking to me, nothing. And so I explained to my team this like history we have, and that my approach was just very like, no nonsense. At this point in my life, I was 25 maybe. And that was really the only time I think he acknowledged me through really the whole process. I start seeing him at the grocery store or at the gym. And I feel like I'm going crazy because I'm like, is this a coincidence? It's not like he's trying to get in touch with me. He's not finding my email. To my knowledge, I'm not seeing him like lurk outside my house. I'm just seeing him places more and more often. And it feels off.
Yeah, it sounds unnerving and almost creepier that he doesn't say anything to you, because you clearly have a history, of knowing each other. I mean, you got a protection order against him. That's incredible. And so what happened next?
At one point I had approached like this soccer league's organizers and, told them the story, the history, and kind of like, I'm nervous, like he hasn't done anything, but I don't feel very safe at the same time. Like, is there anything you can do to, they're like, short of, he was jumping and subbing on all these different, teams that would play us. So it was like, I ended up being on the field as him at the same time. And he's like, other than, his scheduled team not playing yours, I don't know what else to do. Like if he asked to sub on a team and they let him and they're playing you, I don't know what to do. Like, unless he's violating a league rule. And I'm like, yeah, like I get it. But I'm also like, why should I have to quit this league? Why is the responsibility on me to change gyms or start shopping other plays or, all of these other things just to hopefully not bump into him. It's a big enough city. There's plenty of, that league had like 4 sports you could be playing, and he chose the one night of the week. There were 2 different nights you could play soccer. He chose the one night that I played. I felt like I was going crazy because I was like, is this a coincidence? Is this not? If it's not, why isn't he trying to talk to me? Or, if he's mad at me, why isn't he, talking smack on the field? Or, it just didn't make sense to me.
What was he doing for work at the time? Did he have a job? Because it sounds like it's a full-time job to know where you're going to be every minute.
I had no idea. I mean, I wasn't stalking him, so I had no idea. Did he work here? I assumed he lived here. He was coming, every week, as time wore on, he was always there. And I assumed he lived close because it seemed like he was walking. He wasn't walking from a parking lot. So I was, within my own, I was very aware of like not parking in the same area, coming at different times, coming with a teammate if I could, changing up my routine in case he was following me. But I was like, I'm not seeing the same car in my rearview mirror. It's not, I tend to be an observant person. I wasn't really seeing anything that led me to believe I was being followed other than seeing him lots of places. And so it kind of ramps up to this point where it's too much of I'm telling my friends about it. I'm feeling stressed and they're like, there's no way this can be a coincidence. Like, I think you should file a new PPO. And I'm like, yeah, but he's not actually contacting me. How do I prove he's following me other than taking photos or documenting it? I feel like the court would say it's a coincidence, but I have this whole other PPO previously. Like, that's gotta, so I was torn. I reached out to one of the girls on my soccer team, actually was an assistant prosecutor in the same county. So I'm like, I don't know, I'm a master's level social worker. Like, I know a bit about domestic violence and PPO process and things like that. And I have this person who's willing to help me file again. I was, I, in my gut, didn't feel like I had enough evidence. I just felt like I wasn't going to be believed. And that's exactly what happened. We filed, and the court denied the ex parte order, which is essentially granting the PPO without a hearing of both parties. They said we had a complicated relationship, which I was like, there was nothing complicated about this. And essentially, I was too scared to go to that in-person hearing and say, yes, I want the hearing, appear, give my side of the story, and then listen to his and assume a judge is going to believe me. At this point, if this person is unstable, I'm poking the bear and telling him, I know you're following me. I have no idea what his intentions are. So to me, it seems safer to ramp up my documenting, do a little bit more kind of stealth work, essentially stalk him back to prove, take photos where I'm seeing him, things like that, and refile. And I never got that opportunity because he broke into my house in October. I think we filed the PPO like mid-July, late July maybe, and he broke into my home early October 2022 and attacked me in bed and bound me and gagged me and took me to this like storage unit. He had bought 2 storage units, took a wall down between them, and built this like soundproof bunker. And, he handcuffed me to the wall, and I'm like, I've seen enough shows. I know that, if you're kidnapped and you get moved locations, your survival goes way down. I'm like, at least I know this person, maybe that's, if I do get out of this, I know who this person is. But yeah, it was terrifying.
That is absolutely terrifying. And when you were abducted, the night you were abducted, you actually heard him in the house, right? It wasn't like he just kind of sprung in on you?
Yeah, so I'm a very light sleeper, and I had slept with my door a crack so that my pets could kind of come in and out. And I heard a creak outside. I had some water damage on my floor just outside my room. And so the floor creaked a little when you stepped on it. And I knew what it sounded like when my pets walked on it. And I knew what it would sound like if a human walked on it. And I heard a loud creak at like 7 a.m. And it woke me up. Like I said, I'm a very light sleeper. That wouldn't wake a lot of people up. And I kind of look toward the door and I see this shadow that's not normally there. And so I was like, I called my roommate's name out. I thought, well, the laundry is kind of right over there. Maybe she's doing something. She doesn't respond. I'm like, okay, if there's somebody actually in my house on the other side of this door, if they're robbing me, they wouldn't be just standing outside my door. This person, if there's somebody there, wants me. And so I had kept this really sharp hatchet under my mattress, and in this like sleepy sort of startled stupor, I'm like, I either turn on the light or I get this hatchet from under my bed and try to protect myself. And just this thought came into my mind. I was like, if this person wants me, I'm been half asleep laying in bed, I don't know if they're armed. Like, is this weapon going to be used against me? Like, maybe I'm better off. And I decided to turn on the light. That was a 6-second thought process, if that. I just had this like gut reaction to not pull this sharp, thing out. And I don't know how it would have gone had I done that. I don't know. I could have died. He could have died. There definitely would have been blood. So, I didn't do that. And in the time I went to reach for the lamp, he burst in my room and jumped on me. So, I kind of heard him coming. It wasn't like, I woke up to somebody on top of me sort of thing.
So how did he subdue you and get you out of your apartment?
He, got on top. I was still under the covers. So I was trying to kick him, but I really couldn't because my legs were under the covers. And he put his hands around my throat and began like choking me. And so I was like, he could kill me if he wants, but I mean, he's not choking me in a way that feels like he wants to kill me. And, he's saying like, be quiet, stop screaming. I'm yelling for help, hoping my roommate's there. He's like, no, she left. Like, we're alone. And so I essentially pretend to go limp because I was like, I don't know what's going to make him stop. I was like, if I pretend to pass out, what's going to happen next? So I just kind of held my breath and pretended to pass out. And he, I'm like, what do I do? There's not another quick way out of this. He like reaches over to a bag he has and like handcuffs me, cuffs my feet, puts his ball gag in my mouth and tape all across my head. And I'm like, I'm not physically able to get out of this. This isn't going to happen. I still have no idea what he wants with me. He says he wants to talk. And I'm like, nothing about this says I want to talk. Somebody wants to talk with you, you approach them and you say, hey, can we talk? You send them a message, anything but binding them in their own home in that sort of violent way. So he alluded that he was taking me somewhere, and I was just like, he's going to rape and kill me. So he takes me out of my house, and I think this is the last time I'm going to see my house, the last time I'm going to see my pets. It's not even daylight, but this is the last I'm going to see of the world.
Wow. Well, before you continue, it's absolutely amazing. I just want to make an observation here. It's incredible that you're able to recall all the details and you're able to so capable of articulating what happened. I think sometimes a lot of people will sort of block things out that are traumatic. Like, I don't know if I would be able to tell that story so detailed if that happened to me. You have the thought process of, grabbing that hatchet or turning on the light. You remember that and you're recalling it. I think that's important. I think a lot of people who have had trauma in their life, does that help you to be so detailed about it?
I guess I have a two-part answer to this. So I think in the moment, my thought was remember as much as I can, because if I get out of this, they're going to need to find him, or I'm going to need proof of that all of this has happened, because this is wild. Like, off the get-go, this is just wild. Two, so after this happened, obviously through the whole thing in my mind, that was the reason I was trying to remember so many details. And then through therapy, I've been doing exposure therapy. And a lot of that is recounting the event and making it less scary. So exposing yourself to gorilla tape, to handcuffs, to, other things that remind you of the event that you avoid and really gives you that sort of startle response so that it's less scary. So through a lot of the exposure therapy work I've done, I really, was able to recount this story several times and remember details, obviously going through the whole investigation, and through this documentary, when I initially told it, there would be things I'd forget and things that kind of, spark back up. So I feel like it's kind of a twofold reason I feel like I can really do that. But
yeah, it's awesome. I feel like people who have had trauma in their life and they can't deal with it, I think it's a good example. The way that you're trying to cope with it and move on. So
yeah, I mean, exposure therapy is not for everyone.
Right.
Somebody who's also a therapist, I'm like, I know kind of what I would be interested in, what I'm not for this type of event. And that was something that was appealing to me to try. And it, it helped me a lot. So could certainly help others.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. You're in this soundproof storage area, handcuffed to the wall. What happens next?
I'm sitting on a bed. It's this like 7x7 room that has all these soundproof squares on it. And I'm like, is he living here? I don't know. I'm like, he's going to rape me. There's no way there's a bed in this thing. Like, unless he's just angry, but he would have just killed me. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what he wants. So, he tells me he plans to keep me there for 2 weeks. And I'm like, well, what happens after this 2 weeks? Like, you're just going to let me go? Like, people will have been looking for me and you're going to be the prime suspect. Like, there's no easy way out of that. It just seemed like he hadn't fully thought about it. And I could see some regret of like, he's like, I actually didn't want to take you today. I wanted to do some more prep sort of thing. So I can kind of see him like panicked through this of like, oh my gosh, I really did this. And this is kind of what my plan is. And I can see he hasn't quite fully thought of everything. So I'm like, well, what are we going to do for 2 weeks? And, he's kind of like, I don't know, talk, like play cards. Like, I'm like, what?
You said play cards?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're handcuffed to the wall. Are you sitting? Are you standing? Is it just your hands?
I'm
like how
sitting
else
on a twin bed, in my underwear and a t-shirt, because that was what he had abducted me out of my bed in. That's what I was wearing to bed. He like gave me a pair of sweatpants, and he takes all the shackles and everything off. He's like, oh, I just can't talk to you like when you look like this. And I have tape all in my hair. And I'm like, well, you kind of did this. But so it doesn't take me long to kind of get the gist that he genuinely wants to talk with me and that he is still in love with me. And it just blows my mind. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I can work with this. I was like, clearly I can't get out of this double locked door. He's got handcuffs, he has all the power. I'm like, I can't physically get myself out of this situation. He's stronger, he's faster than me. He knows where we are. Like, there's just no real way out. There's no weapon I have. It's this like long day basically of talking with him. And I decide, my mind is the only thing that's going to get me out of this. I'm like, he wants to talk. I can talk. Like, as a social worker and therapist, I'm trained in interview techniques, like how to get someone who wants to make a change in their life, like motivational interviewing from point A of like, I think I want to stop smoking, to like, what motivates you to stop smoking and why haven't you quit yet? And how do we get you to your goal? And kind of twisting those techniques into like, I like latch on to this idea, like he doesn't want to go to prison and he wants to be friends with me. Those are his goals. Or, ultimately he actually wants to marry me, he says, but he realizes that's not going to be practical because I won't agree. And so I'm like, okay, well, those are his goals. How do I get him there and benefit me? Like, how can we get out of this situation? How do I get somewhere safe? And I basically convince him into thinking this isn't a big deal. We can be friends. Until somebody knows I'm missing, this can be between us. And somebody's going to know I'm missing if I don't show up back home tonight. My dog had come with us. Kind of a wild thing that I don't think made the documentary, but my dog was like attached to my side all the time. And so when he like carried me to this car, my dog followed and hopped in the car like we're going somewhere. So I'm kind of like, my dog is here, like, it's this whole thing. But I essentially kind of convince him that what he wants is a possibility. And he's like, well, I'm putting my life in your hands. And I'm thinking, I mean, you got yourself into this situation. I'm the one with my life in your hands. So like, if you want to get yourself out of this situation, this is kind of, you can trust me, you can let me go, thinking the second I get free, I'm going to the police. I am, getting out of this. He decides he can't actually trust me unless he sleeps with me, which I realize has been his plan the whole time. Like, it's very clear. There's a bed. I found condoms in this like bin he had of supplies. He had enough storage supplies to like for us to survive 2 weeks too. So I was like, okay, that, physically we could make it, I think. And so I'm just like, I don't like you like that. Like, I'm willing to be friends with you, but I'm like seeing somebody and that doesn't feel right to me. I don't have that interest in you. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't just sleep with my friends. And like, I don't want to do this. And he's like, I get that. And he's kind of like manipulating this to be like, this is the only way I'm going to let you out, is if I have sex with you. And so I realized like the clock is ticking and this feels like my only way out. I was like, I think he's going to be genuine to his word. There's still the possibility that I let him have sex with me and he doesn't let me go. But I'm like, I've been nothing but honest with you. And he's like, I know you're a very trustworthy person. And like I've done this whole work this day to like build up to this agreement. I can't get him to agree to letting me go that night without sleeping with me. And so that's really where I dissociate and completely, any of that experience is very, very foggy. I essentially just kind of leave my body for that whole period of time while this thing happens. And I'm like, this isn't consent. Like, this is rape. And I had no doubt about that. And I was like, maybe he's okay with that. I don't know. In some mind, I think he had just kind of justified it maybe because I had said, okay, he's going to do it regardless, I think. So if I can have some power in the situation and not be shackled to the wall or, something like that during the whole experience, then, that sounds better to me. A case of, bad or worse. So he holds up his end of the bargain and lets me go. He drives me back to my car. He had parked at a home improvement store a mile down the road and lets me go. And I drive back home because that's what I said I was going to do. I find out he had been tracking my vehicle during this whole day. He's like, has trackers on my car, my roommate's car, my friend's car, just the depth of what I thought he could have been doing. It was that and so much more. And so I was like, I have to go home. I can't just go to the police station or go to the hospital. And I call a friend to come pick me up and take me to the hospital so I can get a rape kit done because there's all this evidence. And I'm like, if we're going to get this guy, now he's done all of these crimes. And it kind of plays out. He goes back home and trusts that I'm telling the truth. And he had been up for a super long time because he kidnapped me. He was waiting outside my house for my roommate to leave. I had asked my roommate to always keep the doors locked, and she, because it was more convenient, went out the slider door without locking it. And there was like 30 minutes between when she left and when I woke up. So, in her mind, it wasn't a big deal. Nobody would have guessed, but he entered through an unlocked door.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone's really expecting somebody to break in at that time anyway. That's early morning. It's not like middle of the night, and it's just it's a unusual time for somebody to break in. But I'm speechless. Like, you tell that story and I'm absolutely speechless. I have no idea how you are able to recall that so again articulately. I mean, you must have been like on edge the entire ride. Like, he does let you out. You leave the bunker. You're back in the car. You're driving to go get your car. Where's your head at there? Are you thinking like this is working, or are you thinking this is a trap?
I think like, holy shit, can I pull this off? Like,
yeah,
I'm seeing like the stars, the fresh air. I'm like the world again. I'm like, I might not die. And it's really not until I get to the hospital or even get in my friend's car, I'm like, I'm not going to die. And then talk to the detectives, like, this maybe is all going to be okay. Like, how, the slim chance I thought I had to survive and things to shake out that way, at 7 a.m. when I was kidnapped, versus 9 p.m. at the hospital, was wild. It was terrifying. Like, I've kept up this calm, facade all day. And then I get to the hospital and I'm just like terrified he's going to show up again and have to go through this whole process. And I'm exhausted and I haven't eaten. And, they give me all of these like drugs to take because they're like, we have no idea if he has STIs or, and it's just a wild, experience. And they catch him really quickly. They catch him, within like 24 hours of speaking to the detectives, I should say, because I didn't speak with them until like 3 a.m. And now we start this like legal process of getting him behind bars, which was a journey in itself.
Yeah, I bet. What a harrowing story. What was it like facing him in court later?
It was definitely scary, even just seeing his face like on the TV when the charges were read, when he was first like arraigned or whatever. Seeing him in court, I mean, it was satisfying, like seeing him chained up the way he had chained me. But it was scary. It was like, still, my fate is potentially in a judge's hands in terms of like sentencing. It was just kind of weird seeing him again after all of that. And, it was almost 2 years. It was like February 2024 when he was finally sentenced. So, he sits in jail and this drags on for a long time. I'm thinking, if he doesn't get a long sentence, am I going to be 45 and he gets free and I feel like I need to move countries, do some kind of witness protection program and change my name and, go into hiding? What am I going to have to do if he doesn't have a long sentence? Because clearly this decade-long stalking, I am not convinced it's going to stop ever. So yeah, that year and a half was tough. And I think seeing him in court, was tense.
Why did that go on so long?
His attorney had he wasn't an easy person to work with, as one might imagine. He came up with a story that we had been engaged in some sexual role play and he took it too far. And, obviously that story is easy to negate. He wasn't easy to work with. His attorney had requested like somebody has to go through competency exams. So yeah, they were like, is this person responsible for their own actions? Are they competent to stand trial potentially? Are they insane? Do they need mental health treatment? And his, state examiners had declared him competent. His attorney was like, wanted an independent examination because, I was hearing that, his attorney was talking to the prosecutor about plea deals. And he's like, I can't get him to plead guilty to any of the criminal sexual conduct charges. He just will not budge on the fact that he did not rape her, despite explaining consent and various factors involved in the whole situation. His attorney was like, is there any way to potentially get this person less time or other treatment? Because, not a perfectly sane person probably really does this too, but it was essentially all those competency exams. I mean, the criminal system moves slowly enough to begin with. All of those delayed everything for quite some time.
And what is it like for you to share your story now after all of this?
I mean, the main reason I want to do it is to help other victims and survivors of stalking, sexual assault, abduction even. I think there's a lot of shame around those topics. Whether the person who's stalking you had been in a relationship with, whatever the factors are that go into why someone feels shame. I think the more stories get out there about it, the more people feel permission to tell their own stories and get help. Another, big reason, is for the general public too, of like, this happens. There's a lot of room for legal improvement in terms of the PPO process. forcing judges to review previous PPOs. I think the documentary that's coming out next week clearly kind of presents how things went with that. And not that a piece of paper can prevent anyone from doing what he did. Clearly that wasn't going to stop him. But, in other situations, that can be a huge help to people and is often the only way that folks who are being stalked can really prosecute their stalker is when they're violating PPOs. Often things are just a slap on the wrist. So I think in terms of awareness for other legal change, resources for survivors, decreasing shame, giving folks something to relate with. I'm a very normal person, and, this can happen to anybody. There's plenty of folks out there that could end up in this situation, sadly.
I want to add one more thing to a good reason why this is going to be so public with the documentary. You had said in this interview as well that what use would it be to go to anybody the second time he came back in your life after the PPO was expired and you're like, well, no one's going to believe me. Something has to change there, because we hear that story all the time. That somebody is in an abusive relationship and then they're being stalked, and then they go and they try to put some sort of like control around the situation, and they're 90% of the time they're never like fully believed. It's always giving the wrong person the benefit of the doubt. And I don't have an answer to that other than like, hey, let's keep saying that the story keeps happening. And because you were smart enough to figure out how to get out of your situation, that doesn't always happen. Like, someone is more prepared than he was. That happens a lot, where they are prepared to fully execute the plan.
Definitely. And yes, the burden of proof for victims is too high. Nobody wants to go through this, and to be met with closed doors and skepticism makes everything you're going through way worse. Even before any of this happened, I had read a lot of books that written by survivors, like Chanel Miller's Know My Name, Chessie Prout, I Have the Right To, different voices like that have been through such a nightmare and gone through the legal process. And there's been a lot of things that I gleaned from others' stories just in my own personal, watching, reading, entertainment sort of pursuit that I think helped me survive this situation, that I hope this never happens to anyone else, but I know it will. And if anything I have been through can help somebody else get through their situation alive, then it's worth it.
Is it surprising to you, like how often stalking can lead to violence?
I guess you just never think it's going to be you, but it's not shocking to me in a society where weapons are readily available, where you have a court system that puts the burden of proof on the victim, and people get away with domestic violence all the time. People get away with sexual assault all the time. And and it's not just, women and men are on the receiving end of that too. I don't want it to be a gendered conversation either, but, things need to change. To me, it's not surprising that that's the case, but you just never you think of somebody stalking, just, somebody sending you repeated messages or following you. Like, you don't think of how terrifying it actually is when somebody, all we have in this world is ourselves, our voices. We can get police, other people involved, but when somebody isn't, abiding by your wishes of your own personal autonomy, it's pretty terrifying. And it's not shocking to me that stalking can become violent. I think the nature of folks that do stalk, if you look more into the research about stalkers, which I have to some degree, like, there's often mental health issues. There's often, narcissism. There's, other issues of not being understood, impulsivity. Those things to me, kind of add up that, stalking can be really dangerous, and that they're often associated with homicide, sexual assault. There's other things that violence isn't just somebody's hitting you necessarily. It's other really dangerous things.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad you're here to tell your story.
Yeah, me too.
Terrifying. You're probably more glad. Yeah. But it is terrifying, but it is something that is important to tell. So I can't applaud you enough for the courage it takes to do that.
And I do hope that through telling my story too, that it somehow honors the thousands of people that have died as a result of stalking or sexual assault or abduction. That to me is the other heavy side of yes, I made it, but there's so many people that haven't, whether just the situation didn't warrant it, or their attacker was more prepared, or whatever the reason may be. That doesn't really matter. It's this is an issue and it kills people, and I happen to not be dead from my situation. There's several people that were not so lucky.